If you are a fan of epic fantasy where princes become assassins, where telepaths seek revenge, and where the world is on the brink of another global war, check out my very first novel, Blood of Once Blood, available now for download on savagebooks.net. Link in the description below. This video is sponsored by Exter. Bojack Horseman Season 5 Episode 6 Free Churro is basically the piece of television that launched this channel. In my second video ever, I dove into the writing techniques and decisions that created the show's most iconic monologue. It's been a little over 2 years since that video, and I am still humbled to this day that it is one of my most successful uploads to YouTube. But what I want to do today is take another look at the phenomenal monologue of Free Churro. But not at this monologue. This monologue, delivered by Butterscotch Horseman. This section of the episode tends to be completely overshadowed by the incredible 20+ minute monologue that Bojack delivers later on, but I believe that Butterscotch's monologue deserves its own special praise and attention. Butterscotch's conceited, self-aggrandizing speech might seem fairly straightforward, but there is actually a lot to appreciate that might not be readily apparent. From the get-go, this channel has always been made to be a service to writers both aspiring and experienced, and it has been my pleasure as a professional editor to break down some of the more nuanced pieces of writing for those of you who want to improve your own skill in the craft. When used correctly, monologues can be an amazing narrative tool for characterization, plot progression, and a host of other critical writing techniques. Hopefully, by using Butterscotch's monologue as an example, you all can come away from the video a little more confident in your own ability to execute an impactful monologue, or just get an in-depth breakdown of a great scene. So, here is the game plan going forward. I will play the clip of Butterscotch in the car with Bojack. When the monologue progresses to something I think is important to note, I will pause the video and give my best breakdown of the writing included. If you want to watch the clip all the way through beforehand without my interruptions, I will include a link just for that too in the description. So, without any further waiting, let's get right into it.
Yes, I see you. Get in. Your mother's having another one of her episodes.
Right off the bat, we have some great lines that in the moment come off as completely innocuous. I know at this point you might be worried that this whole video is going to be me making much ado about nothing considering the writing, but trust me, there are some interesting things going on here, even this early. To properly break this down though, we need to talk about monologues as a narrative tool and what their purpose is relative to other similar narrative tools. I promise I'll keep this quick. The monologue has a lot of closely related cousins, the most famous of which is dialogue, that being two characters speaking back and forth. Then you have asides, where a character is in the midst of dialogue, but then breaks away to deliver lines that no other character can hear. You also have the soliloquy, which is a single character speaking, but doing so without directly addressing anyone else. A monologue, though, specifically, is a character speaking uninterrupted while in the presence of another character. The reason I bring this up is because each of these narrative techniques have different strengths associated with their application. Keeping focused on monologues, they gain power not just from the character delivering the lines, but from the character observing. This is one of the most important aspects of a monologue. Even though Bojack does not say anything during this scene, his reactions and the effect the monologue has on him give weight to the monologue itself. If the whole scene were just a soliloquy and Bojack wasn't there and Butterscotch was just venting to the air, it would come off completely differently. Soliloquies are intrinsic in that they focus on the speaking character, their thoughts, and their reactions. But monologues, strangely enough, gain power from the observer's thoughts and reactions. Of course, this opens up the discussion of whether or not Bojack's eulogy was a monologue, soliloquy, or some fusion of the two, but we are not going to get into that right now. This is all meant to say that even though Butterscotch dominates the scene, Bojack, the observer character, is very much still the focus of the scene. When writing your own monologues, take recognition of the impact of both the speaker and the observer, because there is usually a lot of narrative potential there. And this potential is well realized here in these first two sentences.
Yes, I see you. Get in, get in. Your mother's having another one of her episodes.
Now knowing a monologue's function and the contents of the rest of the episode, these lines take on a new meaning. As we discussed, the monologue is really focused on Bojack, the observer, and that's shown here.
Yes, I see you. Get in, get in. Your mother's having another one of her episodes.
And even better, these lines directly relate to information coming later in the episode itself. I see you becomes ultra important during the eulogy, and those are the first words that Bojack's father says to him.
But there was this moment, this one instant of strange calm, where she looked in my direction and said, I see you.
Likewise, while a first-time viewing audience wouldn't know it, the next line is a commentary on the episode itself.
Your mother's having another one of her episodes.
Free Churro as an episode is about Beatrice and Bojack's relationship with her. It's one in a long line of episodes about Beatrice. The opening lines of this monologue do a great job of setting up the rest of the important pieces of the episode.
Last night she went to see a doll's house with a couple of girlfriends, and now she has ideas. I emerged from my sanctum this afternoon to discover that not only had she not made me lunch, which is a meal I need in order to live, but she'd furthermore locked herself in the bedroom to weep. Loudly.
I love this section of the monologue because it shows a lot of self-assuredness on the writer's part. It demonstrates their restraint and their attention to detail all at once. Here's what I mean as an example. Remember the ultra-famous line from The Silence of the Lambs? You know the one.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Well, all those ingredients that Hannibal listed, fava beans, liver, alcohol, are generally to be avoided by a person taking monoamine oxidase inhibitors, a class of medication meant to help with depression or mental disorders. All of those ingredients generally keep such medication from doing its job, which means one of two things. Either Hannibal Lecter was taking medication during his cannibalistic state and it was being suppressed, or he wasn't taking any medication at all and felt comfortable eating these foods. Basically, aside from being creepy, that fava beans line is meant to show Hannibal's lack of medication before he was imprisoned. Now, does the movie ever explain this? No. Is the movie made worse if you don't know this very niche, specific information? Not at all. But if you do happen to understand the information or even learn it after, what it does is show the care and detail the writers employed when crafting their character and the narrative that surrounds them. The details fit together and they create a better picture of who this person was all along, but done in such a way that it is not distracting or in your face. Now, the reason I bring this all up is because that is exactly what happens here during Butterscotch's monologue.
Last night she went to see a doll's house with a couple of girlfriends, and now she has ideas. I emerged from my sanctum this afternoon to discover that not only had she not made me lunch, which is a meal I need in order to live, but she'd furthermore locked herself in the bedroom to weep. Loudly.
These lines inform the audience that Beatrice went to see a doll's house and became extremely emotional thereafter. And that is pretty much all we hear about it. But what is so interesting are the unspoken, organic details within. A Doll's House is a play, and it revolves around Nora Helmer, a woman who is greatly dissatisfied with her marriage and wants to leave her husband. Again, while unsaid, that is the reason why Beatrice started crying so loudly. That's why she got ideas. She was in a loveless marriage, and she connected to Nora Helmer's troubles. But the subtlety and confident details don't stop there. A Doll's House was written by Henrik Ibsen. That may or may not sound familiar, but if it does ring a bell, it's because Beatrice has mentioned it throughout this series.
It wasn't Ibsen.
That's your takeaway? That your son's TV show wasn't Ibsen?
I'm sorry. Did you need a compliment?
That's...
Oh, I love the part where you got your head caught in the banister.
This was all the way back in Season 2, Episode 1. She criticizes Bojack's show Horsin' Around because it wasn't as good as Ibsen's work. But of course, now because of Free Churro, we know why Beatrice was so impacted by Ibsen, why she held his writing in such high regard. Again, does the show ever explain this? No, and it doesn't need to. Much of writing these little connective character details is to make the most cohesive narrative possible. They aren't meant to be shoved down the reader's throat through exposition or bring the story to a halt to be noticed. They are just there to make sense and to be impactful if and when recognized. If there is one piece of advice that I could give to writers, it is to not be afraid to have some details go missed in your story, especially in a monologue like this. Keeping the pace flowing and the focus on what is important is what truly matters.
Now, it's one thing for a woman to weep, but when they do it at such a volume you can hear it through the door, that's when you know they're doing it just for the attention. Anyway, I was able to cobble together a sandwich for myself, so I'm the real hero of the story.
Alright, this one will actually be pretty quick. Butterscotch is such a vehement narcissist that he can simultaneously make himself the victim and the hero at the same time. This is a great demonstration about writing from perspective. Two characters might have completely different perceptions of an event they shared. I'm sure that if you asked Beatrice about her crying and the reason for it, she would have a different answer than Butterscotch. Being able to detail an event from two differing perspectives is actually a pretty useful skill for a writer to have. For a famous example of this, George R. R. Martin does this very thing. In A Feast for Crows, the reader is shown an event at Castle Black from Samwell Tarly's perspective. Much later on, in A Dance with Dragons, the same event is shown to the reader through John's perspective. Of course, both of these characters have differing perceptions of what happens, and they take away different information. While you may not take this specific writing path, it is valuable to be able to think about a situation and how a particular character might frame it from their own worldview so that they are the hero. This is extremely helpful for writing antagonists like Thanos or Shere Khan, who believe they're in the right, and it's displayed well here with Butterscotch.
It was a couple hours later when I realized I was on a good run with my novel. I had this really interesting sentence that kept going for pages and pages, and I thought about how rare it is to really get in the groove like that. How most days I can't concentrate because my idiot child is blasting the television, and it suddenly dawned on me. Hot cock on a rock, she never even picked up the little noise and snot factory.
This is just some more great subtle writing. First of all, it does some beautiful characterization, again continuing on to showcase how conceited Butterscotch is. But a more subtle writing trick the writing team used was to undercut Butterscotch using his own words. It's an excellent way of showing how distorted his perception of reality is, how egocentric his mind works. What I mean by that is while talking about how rare it is for him to get on a roll with a long sentence, he is not only in the middle of a monologue, the explanation itself is a long sentence.
It was a couple hours later when I realized I was on a good run with my novel. I had this really interesting sentence that kept going for pages and pages, and I thought about how rare it is to really get in the groove like that. How most days I can't concentrate because my idiot child is blasting the television, and it suddenly dawned on me. Hot cock on a rock, she never even picked up the little noise and snot factory.
Since monologues can sometimes degrade into one-sided affairs, it is little writing flares and techniques like this that can really keep an audience interested in the characters and the events they are in.
So, here I am, being your mother, which I know is giving you all sorts of mixed up ideas about gender while your brain is still loose and stupid. Just remember, if you become a queer later in life, this isn't my fault. Don't you sing those songs in your nightclub act called My Daddy Was My Mommy while gazing longingly at a tangled string of pearls. Pearls are for ladies, Bojack. Pearls are for ladies.
So as much as you might be expecting me to unpack these last few lines and to find the hidden underlying meaning, well, there is none. Butterscotch is just a mean man with hate in his heart that can't accept responsibility for his actions. Sometimes, good writing is just good writing.
You know Sunday's my writing day. Sundays are the one day that are just for me and my craft. And still, you and the black hole that birthed you conspire to ruin it for me. What am I supposed to do now? Just go back to writing? I'm out of the zone now. The whole day's shot. All because of you and that brittle wisp of a woman you made the mistake of making your mother.
Again, more blame and no acceptance of who Butterscotch is as a flawed person, and more centering Bojack as the focus of the monologue. He literally blames Bojack for being born. If anything, Butterscotch is angry that his book is not coming along as he wanted, which we know was the case once it was published.
Dad spent his entire life writing this book, but he couldn't get any stores to carry it or any newspapers to review it. Finally, I guess this one newspaper thought he was pretty hilarious because they ran a review and tore him to shreds.
This monologue by Butterscotch is only 458 words, around a page and a half, so the writers had to work efficiently to impress just how much of a selfish jerk Butterscotch was. However, this is all build-up to the change in the direction that the monologue ends on.
No, it's not her fault. She's doing the best she can after all. It's just that you can't depend on women. You can't depend on anyone. Sooner or later, you need to learn that no one else is going to take care of you. That's what I learned when I had to make my own sandwich. You can't rely on other people, Bojack. It's good for you to know that. And she's a good mother for teaching you that. You got a head start on most kids. You're actually very lucky.
So a few things are going on here, and a bunch of the functional puzzle pieces of the monologue have fallen into place. To start, this is the first time in the entire monologue that Butterscotch has taken responsibility for anything. Butterscotch isn't blaming anyone else here, he is simply speaking from the heart. And because of this section here, it becomes evident why the previous sections of the monologue are written as they are. All throughout this scene, Butterscotch has been incredibly vain and selfish and mean, to the point where we just expect that to be who he is. And of course, in this last moment, he is still pretty mean, but he is nowhere near as rude as before. We of the audience are supposed to understand this last section as Butterscotch actually trying to be a good parent. Here, he's trying to instill a life lesson onto his child. The only hurdle from a writing standpoint is that what he says and how he says it are so cruel and destructive that it might be hard for a viewer to take seriously or properly appreciate. So what is the writing solution to this? Well, you make everything beforehand even more cruel and destructive, so that when the conclusion arrives, it makes Butterscotch seem softer, more open, and genuine. Basically, by reinforcing Butterscotch over and over again with his most insensitive behavior, as long as any subsequent behavior is shown to be less insensitive, even if it's still mean, the audience will view it as an improvement to Butterscotch's demeanor. In simplest terms, this is showing your character at 10 all the time, so the viewer can appreciate them when they are at a 6. And even this is in service to a deeper narrative function, characterizing Bojack. Remember, as the observer character, his reaction and response to the monologue act as a focus for the scene. And this whole monologue was leading up to this point, to literally put the focus on Bojack. We know from watching the show that Bojack's reaction is to internalize what his father said. He doesn't depend on people, and he constantly hurts and mistrusts women, just like his father said. And just like anything else in a story, monologues are meant to have a purpose. Monologues are largely given power by 1, the content of the speaker's words, and 2, the reaction of the observer. For this monologue in particular, all the narrative power comes from Bojack and how his father's words shaped his perception of his mother, which of course is a focus for the rest of the episode. Make sure when writing your own monologues, you keep your end goal in mind. How is the observer character going to react? And how can I craft the monologue to cater to that in the best way possible?
Thank you!
Butterscotch really is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't he? And speaking of gifts, if you are Christmas shopping right now for that special dude or dudette in your life, I would highly recommend trying out an Extra wallet. That thing is honestly the smallest, sleekest wallet I think I've ever seen. I've been using my Extra wallet for half a year now, and I'm seriously in love with the thing. And what's best, it caters to my near-destructive laziness. There is a tracking chip for the wallet so that I never have to freak out looking for it, and all the cards are kept in a sleeve that you can pop out like your 007. Trust me, it's as cool as it looks, and it's way better to actually do it yourself. And that is easier now because of discounts. Extra is having their Christmas gifting sale right now, and by using my code below in the description, you can get up to 35% off your Extra purchase along with a free gift bag. So if you need a Christmas gift, or if you really just want a cool wallet, go check them out. Anyway, thank you guys for watching all the way until the end. It was awesome to get to talk about Bojack again. If you like what you heard, like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to be a real homie, support the channel on Patreon or check out the second channel for some more casual editing-based content.